Have you ever lain awake at night, your mind racing with questions like, am I on the right path? Why do I keep making the same mistakes? Why does overthinking only make it worse? It's not that you lack information or advice. What you lack is clarity, a clear mind, a grounded inner world untouched by fleeting emotions, a sense of certainty that comes from within, not from the noise outside. In an age where everyone is rushing, reacting and chasing, the ability to think clearly and choose wisely is a powerful edge. And that's exactly what Stoicism offers. No fluff, no dogma, just timeless principles that have helped people survive wars, loss, chaos, and stay centered through the storm. If you feel lost, reactive, or tired of your own patterns, this video is for you. Because once you learn to think clearly, you don't just make better choices, you live differently. You become strong but calm, decisive but unhurried, and you begin to become the version of yourself you've always known you could be. Some mornings you wake up already overwhelmed, your mind tangled before your eyes even open. Before you've stepped out of bed, your thoughts are pulled tight by unfinished tasks, unanswered messages, and questions with no answers. It's not just a familiar feeling, it's a sign of our times, mental overload. We carry this chaos like it's normal until it starts to shape how we think, choose, and live every single day. That's why clearing your mind isn't something you do only when everything falls apart. It's something you should do daily, like brushing your teeth or making your bed. The problem is, no one ever teaches us how. We learn how to use tools, communicate, and collaborate, but no one shows us what to do with the tangled mess of thoughts we wake up to each morning. And so we start the day with an overloaded suitcase, scrambled thoughts, half-formed emotions, tasks tangled with uncertainty. Our mind becomes a storage room with no system. The Stoics taught, if you want to act wisely, you need a clear mind, one free from the noise that clutters clarity. Picture walking into a room filled with clutter, papers scattered on the table, random items piled on the floor, half-read books from last year gathering dust. That's your mind when it hasn't been cleaned. Every unresolved thought, delayed decision, or buried emotion adds an invisible layer of dust. You can't see it, but you feel the weight of it. And here's the danger. When your mind is crowded with chaos, there's no room left to think clearly. You react instead of choose. You procrastinate because you don't know where to start. You get swept into other people's current because your own voice is drowned out. The first solution: write everything down the moment it comes to you. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Instead of letting thoughts spiral, put them on paper where you can see them, read them, and face them. Write everything: your to-do list, your worries, the friend you haven't called back, fleeting ideas, feelings you can't quite name. No need to judge, structure, or make it pretty. Just let it out. Write until your mind feels lighter, like dropping a heavy backpack you didn't realize you were carrying. The Stoics said, what you don't express will control you. Writing it down takes that power back. Once it's out of your head and onto the page, organize it. This is your mental inbox. Like email, if you don't sort, delete, or prioritize, you end up with a mess where nothing important stands out. So group what you wrote: things to do now, things to delay, things to reflect on, things to let go. Use different colors, a new page, a digital tool, whatever helps you sort. A chaotic thought, when put in the right place, loses its power to overwhelm. Now that your mental inbox is sorted, choose the 3 most important things for the day. Not 5, not 10, just 3. Commit to doing those first, no matter what. This gives your day structure. Amid the noise and distractions, you have a compass. But mental clarity isn't a one-time fix. It needs to become a habit, a morning ritual that resets your mind. It doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe it's 5 minutes of stillness. Maybe it's writing down 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things to do, and 1 thing to let go. Maybe it's walking without your phone, just listening to your steps and your thoughts. Maybe it's opening a blank page and letting your first words find you. Whatever it is, find a rhythm that clears your inner lens before you face the world. And remember, staying clear inside also means protecting yourself from the noise outside. The modern world is a constant signal stream. Notifications, emails, news, social media, ads, group chats. Each one tugs at your attention. Without boundaries, you're pulled in directions you didn't choose. So set limits. Turn off alerts during deep work hours. Take phone-free time each week. Block out content that distracts instead of inspires. The Stoics taught that real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's being able to say no to what you don't need. A few years ago, a young executive in Singapore, Jun, came to me feeling lost. His career was rising, but he was burned out, uninspired, and unsure if he was even doing the right work. He started practicing morning thought dumping and organizing his notes into clear categories. That alone helped him see how much anxiety came from trying to hold everything in his head. He cut 30% of his meetings, delegated more decisions, and spent 20 minutes each morning thinking without touching his phone. Within 3 months, he said it felt like he had reset his brain, and his big decisions became faster and far more aligned. You can start this today. Get a small notebook and keep it by your bed. Before sleep, write down whatever's still circling in your mind. Don't sort it, just unload. The next morning, review it. Pick your 3 priorities and write them on a separate note. Put it somewhere you'll see. Throughout the day, if new thoughts arise, jot them down in your mental inbox, but don't let them hijack your main priorities. At the end of the day, check off what you've done and circle what's left. Day by day, the clutter clears. Clarity grows. You don't have to do it perfectly, just consistently. A clear mind isn't one that never gets messy. It's the one that knows how to clean itself when needed. The Stoics never told us to escape the world. They told us to meet the world with strength from within. When you can steer your thoughts, the world no longer steers you. And every decision, from where to live to who to trust, comes not from fear, but from clarity. Because if you don't clear your own mind, something else will fill it. Ads, anxiety, other people's expectations, and dreams that aren't yours. If you don't choose your first thoughts each morning, someone else will choose for you. And then, you're no longer living your life. You're playing a role in someone else's script. So start with the smallest act, a blank page and a mind willing to be honest. Write, cross out, sort, choose what matters, mute the noise. Do it again tomorrow. You won't notice the change instantly. But give it a week, a month, 3 months. You'll be surprised by the clarity you've been missing. And here's the best part. You don't need anyone's permission to begin. Once you've learned to clear the room within, what you need next isn't more things. It's space. Because it's in that open space where the truly important things finally have room to show up. And that too is the journey ahead, to find your inner stillness, the quiet space where truth begins to speak. In the moment between an unexpected event and your first reaction, there is a space, a very small space, almost invisible. But within that space, if you're mindful enough to notice it, lies a powerful opportunity to either keep reacting the way you always have, or to pause and choose a different response, one that's clearer and wiser. The Stoics taught that clear thinking doesn't come from knowing more, but from learning to separate emotion from circumstance. That space, that pause, is where reason can step in, listen, reflect, and lead. Finding the clear space isn't some lofty philosophical idea. It's a life skill, something you can learn, practice, and apply. And it changes how you approach every decision you make. Why is that space so important? Because most of the choices we regret happen when there's no space at all. You get insulted and you react with anger. You feel pressured and you say yes just to be done with it. You get excited and you leap into commitments without thinking them through. The faster a reaction, the less likely it's guided by reason. Today's world trains us to react constantly, respond to the message right now, comment immediately, and act the moment something happens. But in that constant stream of reaction, the ones who pause, even briefly, gain an edge over those who are always swept away. So, how do you train yourself to find that clear space? Start by learning to stop. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just 3 seconds, one deep breath. When someone says something hurtful, pause before you reply. When you're about to send a harsh email, pause. When you feel the urge to blurt something out, pause. This small act, repeated consistently, builds an inner muscle, the ability to observe, to control, to choose. And you can train it every day, in the smallest of moments. Over time, your brain adapts. It learns to wait, not rush. And in that waiting, clarity begins to speak. But stopping isn't enough. The next step is asking the right questions. Here are 3 that unlock clarity. Does this align with my values? Does this move me closer to or further from my long-term goals? If I take this action, what might the outcome be in an hour, a week, a year? These questions work like a flashlight in a dark room, illuminating what emotions might otherwise be kept hidden. The more honestly you ask and answer them, the more you shift from being pulled by emotion to being guided by intention. Another powerful tool is mental simulation, imagining the outcome before it happens. When you face a big decision, close your eyes and visualize. What would your life look like if you took path A? What about path B? Not just with logic, but with feeling, as if you're living it already. This practice helps you predict consequences more clearly and eases anxiety because your mind has been there already. One executive shared how he always delayed major decisions until he'd written down every scenario, best case, worst case, and most likely. His choices came from preparation, not pressure. Of course, we can't talk about clear thinking without talking about emotion, the thing that so often clouds it. The Stoics didn't say to suppress emotion, but to understand and transform it. A simple and powerful method is naming your emotion. When you feel anxious, whisper to yourself, "I'm feeling anxious." When anger rises, name it. This simple act shifts you from being caught inside the emotion to observing it from the outside, and the observer doesn't get swept away like someone trapped in the storm. When emotions feel overwhelming, find an anchor. It could be a peaceful memory, a calming place, a piece of music, or just your breath. An anchor keeps you from drifting too far from yourself when everything else feels chaotic. And once you've grounded yourself, you can reframe the emotion. Fear isn't always weakness. Sometimes it means you're stepping outside your comfort zone. Stress isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's a call to prepare more deeply. When channeled right, emotions can fuel your progress instead of holding you back. To keep creating this clear space, you also need a solid mental foundation. That comes from small, consistent habits. Getting enough sleep, eating well, light movement, even 5 minutes of daily meditation, or jotting down thoughts before bed. Don't underestimate these things. Your mind can't think clearly if your body is running on empty, if your sleep is broken, or if your emotions have nowhere to go. Just like a craftsman needs sharp tools to create with precision, you need a healthy inner world to see clearly, think sharply, and act wisely. If you still doubt the power of clear space, look back at your biggest mistakes. How many of them happened because you didn't pause? How many decisions were made in anger, fear, exhaustion, or pressure? What might have changed if you had just taken a few seconds to stop? Creating space doesn't require a degree or a new identity. It only asks for one thing: the courage to pause, just for a moment. And in that pause, you'll hear your own voice again. To practice, start small. When someone irritates you, silently count to 3 before you respond. In a meeting, when you feel the urge to push back, take a breath before you speak. When you're about to buy something, leave it in your cart for 24 hours. These small acts, repeated often, train you to think clearly, not just in calm moments, but especially when things get tough. And remember, clear space isn't the goal. It's the gateway. It opens the way for conscious living, intentional choices, and action rooted in values, not pressure. When you master the art of pausing between stimulus and response, you're no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You become the one who shapes the path forward. And when you live this way, your days are lighter, your regrets fewer, and your actions truer to who you really are. Still, there will be times when you pause, think clearly, do everything right, and the outcome is still uncertain. Because some things are beyond your control. That's when you meet the next lesson of clear thinking, learning to accept uncertainty. Because clarity isn't about knowing everything, it's about staying centered even when you're walking through the fog. And that's a lesson we'll explore next. There are moments in life when we find ourselves standing between two shores. On one side lies the familiar but stifling, and on the other, the new and unclear. Like walking away from a relationship that hasn't fully healed, or leaving a long-held job that no longer aligns with your values. That feeling, not knowing what lies ahead, is the essence of uncertainty. And the truth is, none of us can go through life without passing through such moments. But Stoicism teaches us this: uncertainty is not an enemy to be defeated, but a reality to be faced with steadiness. Clarity of thought isn't about having all the answers. It's about being lucid enough to keep moving, even when much remains unresolved. The Stoics understood that we are fragile beings in an unpredictable universe. They didn't try to control the future. They trained themselves to stand firm no matter what the future brought. Because what hurts us isn't the unknown, it's the mistaken belief that we should know what's coming. Clarity in the Stoic sense begins when we let go of that unrealistic expectation. They taught that what we can control are our thoughts, our reactions, and our choices. Everything else, the weather, the market, other people's emotions, the outcome of events, is beyond us. And when we cling to what isn't ours to hold, we lose the strength to hold what truly matters. As it says in the Bible, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Accepting uncertainty is the first step to clear thinking. But acceptance doesn't mean surrender. It's the most active move we can make to reclaim our inner control. When we stop being dragged around by anxiety over what hasn't happened, we start to see the small steps we can take today. Stoics taught that clarity doesn't come from knowing everything, it comes from asking the right questions. Is this within my control? Is the foundation of wise thinking. If the answer is yes, act. If no, let go. This simple principle has the power to transform your entire decision-making system. But how do we actually practice that when life keeps throwing us into the fog? One effective method, used by investors and leaders alike, is to list the possible outcomes, assess the probability of each, and hold them up against your non-negotiable values. Which outcome best aligns with what you believe is right? Which one is tempting but demands you trade off something you shouldn't? The answer won't always feel comfortable, but it will feel honest. Another approach is to write 3 scenarios for a situation: best case, worst case, and most likely. Then ask, if the worst happens, do I have the strength to face it? If the best comes true, am I prepared to make the most of it? And for the most likely one, what can I do today to improve its chances? The key is to write it down, because as long as it stays in your head, it's just smoke. On paper, it becomes shapeable. A submarine engineer once said that every button he installs is a commitment to a scenario that hasn't yet occurred. He doesn't know what will fail, but he knows something eventually will. It was that mindset of preparing for uncertainty that saved his crew during a deep-sea leak. It's a powerful reminder. Clear thinking isn't about seeing the future. It's about preparing yourself so you don't freeze when it arrives. So if you're facing a decision without enough information, try this. Write down what you don't know. Then write down what you do know. From that, pick one small action you can take based solely on what you know for sure. If you still feel unclear, ask, what am I most afraid will happen? And have I survived something similar before? These 2 questions can pull you back to the present, the only place where you have real power. A friend of mine named Anna once told me about a choice she faced: stay in her stable office job or leave everything behind to start a farm in the countryside. She didn't know how the market would react, didn't know if she'd fail, but she knew this: if she stayed, each day would pull her further from herself. She wrote down 3 scenarios, weighed the risks, planned for a minimalist lifestyle in the first 6 months to reduce pressure, and most importantly, she acted on her values. A year later, her small farm wasn't just surviving, it was inspiring other young people. She didn't succeed because she knew what would happen. She succeeded because she moved forward without needing to. Stoicism never taught us to know all the answers. It teaches us to govern our minds while seeking them. As the letter to the Corinthians says, "For we live by faith, not by sight." You don't need perfect visibility to move forward. You just need enough faith in the person you are becoming, with each honest choice, each value-driven action. To build clarity in uncertainty, start each day with 1 minute to ask, what am I unclear about today? And within that, what can I control? Write down 2 things. Then choose one small action to commit to, not to eliminate uncertainty, but to stay anchored through it. Bit by bit, your mind becomes like water, flexible yet grounded, able to move with the current, but always flowing in the direction you choose. Remember, embracing uncertainty is the foundation of clear thinking and wise decision-making. Not because it makes life easier, but because it makes you stronger. What matters isn't whether you know what will happen. What matters is knowing who you are when it does. And sometimes to walk through uncertainty, you have to examine how you think. Your current mindset was shaped by experience, belief, and often outdated assumptions. If you've made it through the fog, the next step is not just to adapt, but to rewire how you see the world. That's the next lesson, a quiet but powerful transformation for those bold enough to live with clarity from the inside out. Thought isn't a pre-packaged gift we're handed at birth. It's more like a garden, raw and untamed at first, then slowly shaped by our experiences, emotions, and the quiet words we repeat to ourselves each day. Some let their gardens run wild, choked by the weeds of fear, judgment, and old beliefs. Others choose to clear it out, turn the soil, and plant anew, to create a space where clear thinking can grow. Stoicism teaches that few things matter more than learning how to think again, with clarity, composure, and freedom from what we cannot control. And yet, most of us don't really know how we think. We just think, and then we act. We believe we're making logical decisions, but often they're driven by invisible currents, habits of thought formed before we were aware enough to question them. Have you ever stopped, even just for a moment, and asked yourself, whose eyes am I using to see this? What belief is speaking on my behalf right now? If the answer is silence, that's the signal. It's time to begin again. Time to rebuild your thinking. Rebuilding your thinking isn't just about changing your thoughts. It's about rewriting the foundation. It's like realizing the map you've used your whole life is wrong, and now it's time to learn how to redraw it, line by line, through experience and awareness. This becomes urgent when we realize that the brain has a built-in bias toward the negative. It's a survival mechanism. Our ancestors needed to remember where the danger was, not where the apples grew. But in modern life, it keeps us fixated on mistakes, failures, and risks, blinding us to what's actually going well. That's how thinking becomes distorted, heavy, and directionless. One simple yet powerful way to start rebuilding your thinking is to shift your focus. Each day, take a moment to write down one thing you're grateful for. Just one. Don't look for something big. A warm cup of tea on a rainy day. A surprise message from an old friend. A morning without traffic. When you write, you're not just recording. You're slowing down your thoughts, steering attention away from the brain's negative default, and training yourself to notice even the smallest sources of light. In parallel, using affirmations, if done right, can serve as a steady background track for rewiring your mind. Don't repeat hollow lines like, "I'm strong," or "I'm successful." Instead, say things like, I'm learning how to face difficulty without panicking, or I'm building the habit of questioning my thoughts before believing them. A good affirmation isn't self-deception. It's a real behavior you're practicing, something you can see, feel, and repeat daily. But there's something else, quieter, more subtle, that eats away at clarity: decision fatigue. Every day you're making choices, from the smallest ones like what to wear or eat, to the big ones like where to invest or whether to say goodbye. Your mind isn't a bottomless well. It drains with every decision. The Stoics advise that if you can simplify repeat decisions, do it. Wearing similar clothes each morning doesn't dull your creativity. It preserves your clarity for decisions that truly matter. That's not laziness, it's conserving mental energy. Even when you have time and energy to think, you're still vulnerable to mental shortcuts. The brain likes speed. It assumes, judges, labels, and calls it truth. But Stoicism teaches that every thought must be cross-examined, like a witness, no exceptions, no immunity. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough for this," ask, "Why do I believe that? Have I ever done something like this before and succeeded?" These seemingly small questions are some of your strongest tools. They cut through the old patterns trying to take control. Modern neuroscience now backs what Stoic philosophers always lived by. Your thinking can be reshaped. The brain can change and form new connections. This is called neuroplasticity. And it happens every time you learn a new skill, meditate, or reframe how you see an experience. When you choose to see failure as a strategic lesson rather than a dead end, you're redrawing your internal map. When you dare to learn something new, whether it's cooking or public speaking, you're opening new pathways in the mind, not just in skill, but in self-perception. An airline commander once said that what kept him calm in emergencies wasn't courage, it was trained thinking. He was used to asking questions, analyzing data, and not letting panic take over. That's the result of rebuilding thought until it becomes second nature. You don't need to be a commander. You just need to train your mind daily in the same way. If today you want to begin, try one of these small mental practices. First, write down 3 thoughts that usually come up when you're disappointed. Then, for each, write 3 pieces of real evidence from your life that contradict it. You might be surprised how rarely reality aligns with the stories you tell yourself. Second, the next time you feel pulled into negative thinking, ask, "What lens am I looking through right now? Am I seeing this as rejection or as a second chance?" The right question brings you back from reaction into choice. And lastly, choose one affirmation tied to a concrete action. Repeat it every morning. Let it guide you like a compass throughout your day. Clear thinking isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's a journey, one step each day. Some days your mind will feel like a tangled knot. That's your cue to stop, breathe, and remember, this isn't about perfection, it's about mental training. Return to your tools, to the right questions, to your writing habit, and to the courage to believe you can see a little more clearly than yesterday. When your thinking has been rebuilt, when questioning, directing, and refreshing your perception becomes a habit, you don't just think more clearly, you start to act more intentionally. And at that point, what you need most is a system, a decision-making structure that keeps you grounded even when emotions rise or the path ahead looks uncertain. That's where we go next. where clarity becomes execution and thought leads to action. The next lesson is this: design your decision-making system. Many people think of decision-making as a single act, a moment of choosing between A or B. But in reality, decisions aren't made in a split second of impulse. They are the final product of many factors: your environment, your daily rhythm, your level of alertness, your belief system, even the way your desk is arranged. The Stoics taught that to think clearly and make wise decisions, we can't wait until the moment of choice to begin thinking. We need a system, a structure of living, to protect our clarity before life crashes in. A decision-making system isn't some lofty or complex tool. It's simply how you design your day, how you wake up, how you spend your time, how you interact with information, and who you allow into your inner circle. If each day is a battlefield, your system is your armor. Without it, you decide based on instinct, exhaustion, or distraction. Most major mistakes in life don't come from a lack of information. They come from making choices in a foggy, overloaded mind. The Stoics didn't teach step-by-step techniques, but they lived by principles. And in the modern world, living by principle means building a life that gives reason room to operate. Start with the simplest foundation, your physical space. You can't think clearly in a cluttered room filled with noise and shadows. Clean your environment not just for tidiness, but to create a mental refuge. A clear desk, a calming piece of art, a few inspiring quotes on the wall, a small plant. These small choices shape a space where thought can breathe. From space, we move to time. A strong decision-making system includes a dedicated block of time for thinking, no meetings, no emails, no distractions, just sitting and thinking. Some call it a thinking block, others journal, and some take silent walks. The format doesn't matter. What matters is making it a habit, a daily pause to reset the mind. No one drives hundreds of miles without refueling. Why start a busy week without restoring clarity? Another key pillar of the system is how you handle information. Every day, you're bombarded by content, news, social media, emails, ads, notifications. It's not just exhausting, it clouds your judgment. The more noise you absorb, the less clearly you can think. A smart system filters the static. Unfollow unnecessary accounts. Turn off non-essential notifications. Delete junk emails. Protect your attention like the precious cognitive asset it is. Be intentional about who and what gets access to your mental space. Just as the body needs routines to stay in rhythm, the mind needs rituals to stay sharp. A strong decision-making system often includes meaningful routines, not robotic habits, but purposeful ones. A morning that starts with quiet reflection, reading a bit of philosophy, or jotting down what matters is a morning with direction. An evening that ends with reviewing the day's choices is an evening of insight. That's how you not only make better decisions, but learn from everyone you've made. People are also part of the system. An honest friend, a thoughtful colleague, a loved one who truly listens, these are mirrors that reflect your thinking back to you. No one is forever wise in isolation. Clarity grows when someone is willing to ask, "Why did you choose that?" Or, "Is there a better option you haven't seen yet?" That's not doubt, that's growth. But for this to work, you have to choose your people well. Decision-making doesn't thrive in toxic, judgmental, or emotionally volatile environments. If you want to think clearly, Stay close to clear minds. One of the most vivid examples of the power of systems is legendary investor Ray Dalio. He doesn't believe in gut feelings, he believes in data, feedback, and deliberate repetition. Every mistake he's made has been logged, analyzed, and turned into principles. At Bridgewater, the firm he founded, every decision is traceable, every idea openly challenged, and every person knows the rules they're operating by. It's not just an investment company, it's a thinking machine built to learn and improve its decisions over time. Looking at a system like that, you might ask, is my life helping or hindering my ability to think clearly? Every day, does your personal system, from how you manage time and space to who surrounds you, reduce noise, boost awareness, sustain principles, and restore energy? If the answer is fuzzy, that's your clearest signal. It's time to rebuild your life structure, not to control everything, but to stay clear enough to choose well when it really counts. And you can start small. Clean a corner of your desk and make it the one place where important thoughts live. Set your alarm 15 minutes earlier so the morning doesn't rush you. Turn off all non-essential notifications for the first 3 hours of the day. Meet a trusted friend for coffee once a week, just to talk through the choices you're weighing. Start writing down each day's decision and the reason behind it. Just like that, you've begun to live inside a thinking system. Most important of all, take care of your body like the priceless machine it is. No one makes wise choices when they're sleep-deprived, skipping meals, or staring at a screen for 10 hours straight. You need sleep to reset your brain, clean food to energize your body, and healthy recreation to refuel your spirit. Clarity doesn't come from squeezing your brain harder. It comes from living in a way that supports your mind. By now, you might see that building a decision-making system isn't some luxury for philosophers or CEOs. It's part of living intentionally. It's how you protect yourself from choices that lead to regret. It's a declaration: I will not let life decide for me. I will decide how to live mine. And here's the best part. When your system is strong enough, you no longer have to wrestle with every choice. Most of the right decisions are already baked into how you live, your environment, your routines, your habits, and your people. You stop asking, how do I make the right decision? And start asking, how do I live right so that good decisions come naturally? Eventually, though, you'll face harder decisions, not between right and wrong, but between right and more right. That's when systems won't be enough. You'll need something deeper: core values. They are your compass when the map fails, your light when systems break down. That's the next lesson. Not just how to think clearly, but how to choose what's true to you, no matter the pressure, no matter the noise. In a world where choices come at us as relentlessly as the stream of information on our phones, from trivial ones like what to eat tonight, to life-changing ones like choosing a career or ending a relationship, clarity of thought is no longer a luxury. It's essential. Stoicism teaches that clear thinking doesn't come from chasing perfect information, but from being deeply rooted in what never changes: your core values. If you don't know what you're living for, every choice can leave you drifting. But when your life is grounded in a clear set of values, decisions are no longer ruled by impulse or social pressure. They're guided by your inner compass. That's when you truly begin to own your life. Stoicism doesn't tell you what to do. It teaches you how to shape who you are. In this philosophy, the right choice isn't always the easiest one, but it always reflects the person you aspire to become. Wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice are the foundational virtues Stoics aim for. But in modern life, these might expand into values like honesty, growth, responsibility, inner freedom, or creativity, whatever makes you feel most authentic. The key is that your values must be limited, clearly defined, and worth making sacrifices for. When your core values aren't clear, your mind becomes like a beach at high tide, constantly pulled by the current of circumstances. One day you turn something down because it doesn't feel right. The next day, you agree to a similar thing because they made a good point. It's not that you're indecisive, it's that you haven't built a stable filter. Stoicism teaches that reason is our most powerful tool, but reason only works when it knows what it's protecting. When you define 3 to 5 core values, not flashy words, but principles you won't compromise, you gain your first mental filter. These values don't just help you make the right choices, they help you say no to the wrong ones. One practical way to reinforce this is to write a personal guiding statement, a single sentence that defines how you want to live. Something like, I live with honesty, I keep learning, and I act with courage. Don't write it to sound impressive. Write it to stay true. Then read it every morning as a ritual to align with your inner direction. Every time you face a decision, hold it up to that sentence. If it asks you to bend your honesty, abandon your growth, or act from fear, no matter how tempting, it's not for you. Clear thinking isn't just for life's big forks in the road. It needs to show up in everyday choices, because those are what build your character. When you decide whether to speak up in a meeting, stay an extra half hour to finish something, or be honest with a friend about something hard, those are moments you train your clarity. Don't dismiss the small stuff. Every action is a vote for the person you're becoming. Your values are what tell you which votes to cast. A simple but powerful tool for weaving values into decision-making is the 3-question filter. Before making a choice, ask yourself, does this conflict with my values? If everyone knew I did this, would I feel ashamed? If I weren't afraid, would I still do this? The point isn't to find the perfect answer, it's to cut out choices that go against who you really are. Here's a real-life example. An entrepreneur once had to choose between partnering with a major player who was known for shady tactics or walking away from a multi-million-dollar opportunity. He walked away, not because he didn't need the money, but because his core values were transparency and sustainability. He lost a lucrative deal, but he kept something more valuable, the trust of his team and his clients. Years later, the people who witnessed that choice became the foundation of a company known for its strong, enduring culture. Now it's your turn to practice. In the next week, pick a decision you're on the fence about, whether it's about work, a relationship, or your health. Write down 5 core values you want to live by. Then shine that decision through the lens of those values. Does it align? What's really pulling you toward one option? Fear, the desire for approval, or loyalty to what you truly believe in? Write it out. Reflect. No one's grading you, except you. Another way to build this muscle is to anchor your values in daily habits. If creativity matters to you, block off time each day for uninterrupted creative work. If honesty matters, practice speaking truthfully and kindly in everyday conversations. Don't wait for a big decision to apply your values. Values are like muscles. You can't rely on them in a crunch if you haven't been training them regularly. Once you begin living this way, something strange happens. Your mind gets lighter, faster, clearer. Not because life gets easier, but because you've let go of one of its heaviest burdens, the inner tug-of-war between should and want. When every decision is filtered through your values, you stop overthinking. You just tell the truth. So if you want clarity and the strength to make decisions that matter, start with your foundation. Define and live by your core values. Write your personal guiding sentence. Use the 3-question filter. Embed your values into small, daily habits. Don't wait until life gets messy to untangle it. Live as if every decision is a snapshot of your soul. And once you've built that inner compass, once you know what you're living for, the next step is learning how to fine-tune your thinking each day. Not to avoid mistakes, but to become wiser after every choice. Clear thinking isn't a destination, it's a practice. And the next step is to enter a new lesson, where every decision becomes a signal, and every signal sharpens your thinking. That's the art of thinking in feedback loops. Let's begin Lesson 7 with a thought-provoking image. A man walks into the forest to chop down trees. He brings an axe, strength and determination. But after an hour, no tree has fallen. A passerby asks, "Have you sharpened your axe?" The man replies, "I don't have time. I'm chopping trees." At first glance, the story seems like a joke, but in reality, many of us live exactly this way, constantly acting, deciding, pushing forward, without pausing to assess, adjust, or learn from what we've done. Stoicism teaches that a clear mind doesn't mean a flawless one. It means a mind committed to a cycle: act, reflect, adjust, then repeat, but better each time. That's how clarity grows and sound decisions emerge, not from theory, but from feedback loops. In a chaotic world where everything changes by the hour, the ability to make wise decisions is no longer a luxury, it's a survival skill. You can't control all the variables, but you can control how you observe and respond. Clear thinking doesn't come from avoiding risk, but from confronting it, failing, analyzing, and trying again. Without a system to reflect, we stay trapped in loops of old mistakes dressed in new forms. Feedback loops are the system. As the Stoics put it, a life without reflection is like being blind in daylight. You see everything, but have no idea where you're going. And feedback loops aren't abstract theory. They're practical and should be practiced every day. First, you act. Nothing replaces real experience. You can't think your way into better decisions. You have to try, speak up, say no, pitch in. Then you evaluate. Sit down. Ask yourself, what went as expected? What didn't? What assumptions was I relying on? Were my emotions distorting anything? Next, you seek outside feedback. A candid colleague, a brave friend, someone willing to say what you couldn't see. And finally, you write. Writing clarifies thought. Without it, emotions can hijack clarity. With it, patterns emerge. You might notice you often decide out of fear or skip details because you're rushing. This mindset isn't just theoretical, it's embedded in some of the world's best systems. In Finland's education model, teachers write daily reflections after each lesson. What engaged the students? What was confusing? What questions were missed? They're not just teaching, they're learning from themselves. And that's what makes their system world-class. Not a flawless curriculum, but a commitment to real-time learning. In the same spirit, a friend of mine, the founder of a food manufacturing company, once expanded ambitiously into international markets. He invested billions, hired a team, and poured money into marketing. 6 months later, it collapsed. But instead of retreating, he gathered his team and dissected everything. What was real? What was wishful thinking? They realized their product didn't fit local culture, and they hadn't done enough field research. The mistake was clear. But the turning point came when he created a feedback protocol for every major decision. No move forward without 3 distinct perspectives. From that failure, his company slowly rebuilt, stronger, not by chance, but by mindset. One effective way to train this loop is through a decision journal. Pick a notebook or a digital file and create 4 columns: situation, decision, outcome, lessons learned. Spend 15 minutes each week writing down key decisions you made. Don't just record results. Capture your thinking process. What influenced you? Were emotions involved? Did someone sway you? If you could do it again, what would change? After a month, patterns will appear. Maybe you avoid confrontation or make snap decisions when emotions peak. Only when you see these habits clearly can you change them. Another tool is controlled experimentation. Don't wait for perfection. Think small. Try a basic version of the idea you're considering. Want to launch a class? Start with 5 people. Want to change your lifestyle? Test it for a week. The goal is to generate real outcomes, living data to assess. Experimentation isn't indecision. It's flexibility. It's growth. It's the Stoic way, non-attached, grounded in observation, always adjusting. To deepen this practice, try a classic Stoic habit: nightly reflection journaling. But don't just write feelings, ask 3 questions. What decisions did I make today? What were the results? What will I do differently next time? Done consistently, this rewires your brain to think in feedback. It slows you down just enough, not to hesitate, but to sharpen awareness. And you'll find yourself regretting less. Not because you're flawless, but because you're learning fast from small mistakes before they grow large. This mindset makes you like the true woodsman, not just swinging hard, but sharpening your axe. You take action with a readiness to adapt. You move beyond right versus wrong, success versus failure. You live in the rhythm of continuous improvement. That's the Stoic goal. A life anchored from within, not dragged by emotion or crushed by circumstance. Clear thinking isn't born in silence. It's forged through action, accountability, and iteration. And here's the paradox. The more fluent you become in feedback, the more decisively you move. You don't need endless analysis. You don't hesitate forever. You know you can adjust. That brings us to the next Stoic principle, the art of swift, clean decisions, bold, unburdened, free from the trap of overthinking. That lesson awaits you when you're ready. But for now, ask yourself, how many thoughtful decisions did I make this week? How many did I revisit? How often did I ask others where I might be wrong? If the answer is not many, then this is your chance. Your chance to live in the loop. Don't wait for something big. Start with your next conversation, your next email, your next tiny choice tomorrow. Because once the habit of feedback becomes part of you, once you start learning from everything, you'll discover something powerful. Clarity speeds up. Decisions become quick because correction is always possible. And from there, the next lesson begins. When we think of clear thinking, the image that often comes to mind is someone sitting still in a quiet room, eyes half closed, mind calm like a glassy lake. But that's only part of the story. In reality, clarity doesn't arrive in silence, it shows up in chaos, in a tense meeting, in the middle of a stream of unread messages, when you're standing at a crossroads that could change the course of your life. In those very moments, with everything messy and unresolved, you have to decide. Quickly, decisively, imperfectly, but in a way that's true to who you are. The Stoics taught this. Clarity doesn't come from accumulating more information. It comes from the ability to focus on what matters. It's not about knowing everything, but knowing what doesn't deserve your attention. Not about waiting until you're certain, but learning how to move forward in uncertainty. The Stoics didn't try to erase unpredictability. They coexisted with it and kept going. That's why the ability to decide swiftly and cleanly isn't just a technique. It's a reflection of a mind trained to see the line between what it can and cannot control. Why does this matter so much? Because today, choice has become a burden. We're drowning in options and overwhelmed by information. The result? Paralysis. We tell ourselves we need more time to think, but what we're really chasing is absolute certainty, a fantasy. The longer we wait, the deeper we sink into a fog of fear and expectations. And the more lost we feel, the less we act. Clarity, then, isn't a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of courage. So, how do we learn to make clear decisions in a noisy world? The key lies in breaking decisions down into short, low-stakes experiments. This isn't a new idea, but done right, it can radically shift how you move through daily life. Start by asking a core question. Simplify the decision until you can write that question on a sticky note and know exactly what you're trying to figure out. What's the most important thing about this decision? What's confusing you? What's keeping you stuck? For example, if you're considering a career change, don't get lost in over-analyzing whether it's a good fit. Instead, ask, do I feel genuinely excited doing this every day? If you're unsure whether to live alone or stay with family a while longer, ask, what do I need most right now? Space to grow or deeper connection? Questions like these cut through emotional noise and point you back to what really drives you. Once the question is clear, gather information, but just enough. In Stoic thinking, restraint doesn't apply only to material things, but also to knowledge. How much do you need to know to take the first step? You don't need to read 10 books to try a new job. You don't need to master the market to test a product. Focus on what helps you move forward now. Let feedback from real action fill in the rest. If you want to learn music, don't read 100 reviews comparing pianos and guitars. Walk into a store, play each for 15 minutes, or borrow an instrument from a friend. If you're unsure about pursuing a master's abroad, don't pour your energy into a full application just yet. Start with a quick chat with an alum, or sign up for a free online class from that school. Then comes the most critical part, the test action. Not impulsive action, not one-off action, but small, time-bound, purpose-driven steps. Write 3 blog posts before deciding to pursue writing. Give a test lecture before committing to teaching. Build a prototype instead of sinking money into a full brand. Thinking about starting a podcast? Record one 5-minute episode on your phone and send it to a few trusted friends. Wondering whether to move to the countryside. Work remotely from there for a week. Notice how your energy, emotions, and output shift. Each experiment needs a deadline. Without one, your mind will spiral. Set a time frame, 3 days, 1 week, or a month, depending on the test. When it ends, pause and reflect. Not to praise or criticize, but to ask, what sparked excitement? What brought confusion? What made you want to take one more step? That cycle of deliberate evaluation is where clarity is forged, not from theory, but from lived, measured experience. Consider this story from aviation. In 2009, Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger landed U.S. Airways Flight 1549 on the Hudson River after both engines failed. He had less than 3 minutes, no full data, no time to think. Yet he acted quickly, precisely, and correctly. Why? Not intuition. It was the result of thousands of hours of simulation, hundreds of iterations of feedback, and decision training in high-pressure scenarios. He wasn't waiting for certainty. He was trained to act without it. We can train this too, starting with life's smallest moments. Choosing lunch, replying to messages, deciding where to go for the weekend. Make decisions in 2 minutes. When an idea pops up, write it down and pick an action to test in 24 hours. When something nags at you, don't ask, should I or shouldn't I? Ask, what can I try in the next 3 days to get a clearer sense? Over time, you'll build a decision-making nervous system, one that's not hijacked by fear of being wrong, but guided by step-by-step clarity. Each night, write down 3 moments during the day when you hesitated. Reflect on what held you back, the missing info, the emotions, and the uncertainty. Then jot down a small action you could take to bring more clarity. This isn't a diary, it's a training log for your inner compass. After a week, you'll notice you're no longer stuck in the fog as often. You'll be acting faster, sharper, and still clear enough to adjust as you go. The Stoics said, a mind that doesn't act becomes a breeding ground for fear, but a mind that acts at the right moment, however small the act, cleanses itself. You don't need clarity before you act. You act to become clear. If that idea sinks in, it can transform your life. And that transformation doesn't come from one big decision. It comes from hundreds of small ones. When you choose to move instead of stall, when you choose to test instead of overthink, when you focus on the essential rather than hoard endless knowledge. In those moments, you build a rare kind of power this modern world sorely lacks: action clarity. So if you're standing at a decision point today, changing careers, moving homes, ending a worn-out relationship, ask yourself, what's one small, specific, safe thing I can try to better understand what I truly want? Then go do that. No hesitation, no waiting for perfection. Let action light the path. That's how the Stoics lived, not seeking certainty, but seeking integrity and alertness in every choice. Clear thinking isn't a luxury for the reflective few. It's a survival skill for anyone who wants to live in alignment with themselves. And it doesn't come from how smart you are, but from how bravely you move forward, without all the answers. And once you've begun, once you've learned to decide quickly and cleanly, another question emerges. Now that I know what's right, how do I act boldly in its direction, even when emotions and circumstances waver? Because clarity without action is just a dream. And the next chapter opens with a deeper pursuit, turning clarity into action, where reason isn't just light, but real propulsion for the life you're building. Clear thinking isn't something we stumble upon in a sudden flash. It's a state of mind built day by day through deliberate action. Often we believe we're thinking when in reality we're just looping inside our heads, analyzing, weighing options, and hesitating. The Stoics taught that thought only matters when it leads to right action. Clarity doesn't come from endless contemplation. It emerges when we move forward, even when we're unsure. Turn clarity into action isn't just a catchy phrase. It's a fundamental rule for better decision-making and living with wisdom every day. On the path to mental clarity and sound decisions, the biggest obstacle usually isn't that we don't know what to do. It's the gap between knowing and doing. We know we should eat healthier, exercise, rest, and pause before speaking important words. But how often, between knowing and doing, do we stay still? The Stoics said, if an action is right, do it now. If a thought is true, live by it. Every delay dulls mental clarity, like a mirror that grows harder to see through the longer it goes uncleaned. The key insight here is this: inaction keeps the chaos alive. When we don't act, we stay in a blind spot, where everything seems reasonable, but nothing actually changes. And when we stop moving, we lose our sense of control. That's when anxiety, self-doubt, and confusion creep in. Clarity takes root only when it's repeated through action. Nothing sharpens the mind more than taking the right action at the right time. Every time you follow through, even with something as small as silencing your phone to focus, you're strengthening an inner muscle, the muscle of reason and self-control. So how do we turn clarity into consistent, tangible action? It starts with intentional thinking. Begin each day not just with a to-do list, but with this question: what's the most important thing I need to do today to live true to my values? That one question moves you from reacting to directing. It helps you filter out the tempting but meaningless distractions and focus on what actually matters. Many people go through life never asking that question. They let emails, meetings, and habits drag them along and wonder why they feel exhausted and directionless by the end of the day. Next, create a structure, even a simple one, to give your mind an anchor. A morning block for planning and clear thinking. A 3 priorities rule to avoid getting lost in the weeds. A fixed time each day for reflection and course correction. These structures don't limit you, they guide you. Like a safety rail for a mountain climber, structure keeps you from sliding when pressure, emotion, or procrastination strike. But for action to take root, we need to remove what blocks it. Each day, cut out the distractions, the social feeds that breed comparison, the meaningless conversations, the habits that drain time without giving anything back. Stoicism doesn't demand a life of deprivation. It asks for discernment. Keep only what helps you think clearly and act rightly. An overloaded mind can't think well. A cluttered schedule can't support wise choices. Once the noise is filtered and your intentions are set, the next challenge is consistency. Nothing builds self-trust like keeping a promise to yourself. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even something small, you're depositing into your inner confidence account. Break a promise, even a small one like hitting snooze or skipping a class, and that account shrinks. It's not just a hit to your mood, it weakens your ability to make good decisions in the future. When you stop trusting yourself, you question everything. To stay consistent, Use a simple but powerful tool, the learning loop. At the end of each day, take 5 to 10 minutes to write down 3 things. What did I do well today? What could I have done better? What will I do differently tomorrow? This habit keeps you improving, but more importantly, it lets you track your own growth, even in small steps. Each time you write it down, you're turning experience into momentum rather than letting it fade away. That's how action feeds clarity, not with perfect outcomes, but with conscious progress. Many people don't act for one simple reason: they're afraid of getting it wrong. But Stoicism teaches that doing nothing out of fear is worse than doing the wrong thing. At least if you act, you learn. Inaction costs more. It costs clarity, time, and opportunity. The way to overcome fear isn't by overthinking. It's by starting small and fast. Don't wait until you're sure. Try, then learn. Draft, then revise. Step forward, then look back. Clarity isn't something you find. It's something you forge through deliberate action. One practical approach is the small experiment principle we covered earlier. Instead of big, risky changes, try something simple, measurable, and easily adjustable. If you want better focus, don't sign up for a long course right away. Try 30 minutes of no phone each morning for a week. Observe the result. Adjust. Expand. These small steps lay the foundation for lasting habits and sharper thinking. Take startups, for example. They don't wait to perfect a product before launching. They release a simple version, get feedback, improve, and repeat. That's the action feedback improvement cycle. And in your personal life, you can do the same with work, relationships, health, and learning. Small actions, fast feedback, lessons learned, move forward. From there, you start building a life with intention, each day guided by clear goals, each action chosen mindfully, each experience a part of your learning process. Most importantly, you develop deep trust in your ability to adapt. When you believe you can grow from any outcome, good or bad, you stop fearing mistakes. You choose more freely, act more bravely, and think more clearly. If there's one thing you can do to begin, it's this. Pick one small action that matters to you and do it today. Don't wait for perfect clarity. Don't wait to be completely sure. Just begin. That action will show you the next, and from there, you'll start moving out of the fog toward a life that's clear, intentional, and true to your direction. Action is what's missing in most self-improvement journeys. People get stuck at understanding, analyzing, and planning. But if you act, you've already gone halfway. The rest? That's about building your inner compass, an instinct for what's right, what matters, what's worth keeping. That's the next step, when clarity isn't just about making good choices, but about living with purpose, even in life's most uncertain moments. Forging an inner compass isn't about chasing perfection. It's about building inner stability, the kind that helps you think clearly without being swept away by noise, mood swings, or the conflicting opinions of the world. In a fast-changing world, those without internal direction often drift, are lost, are impulsive, or are paralyzed. But people with an inner compass are different. They know where they are, why they're moving, and where they're headed. The Stoics taught that clarity doesn't come from knowing everything, but from knowing who you are and what truly matters. An inner compass doesn't just appear. It's shaped over time through self-observation, real-life experience, and most importantly, through honest, ongoing dialogue with yourself. When your inner direction is clear, you stop making decisions based on impulse or emotion. You begin making decisions based on values. And that creates strength, not the kind that controls others, but the kind that helps you control yourself. Why does this matter so much? Because every day you face hundreds of decisions, from how you react when someone insults you, to what you choose to do with your life. Without inner direction, you're pulled by reflexes, pressure, and expectations, all external forces. The Stoics taught that a person is only truly free when they can govern themselves. And to do that, they need an inner compass to navigate murky waters. So, how do you start building one? First, you need to learn how to trust yourself. That sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things, especially after failure. Real confidence isn't about always being right. It's about knowing that even when you're wrong, you'll learn something and do better next time. Think of a time you stood back up after what felt like a total collapse. Maybe you failed an important exam, but later found a better path. Or you were rejected from a dream job, but it led you to launch your own project. These memories, however small, are proof that you can trust yourself. So the next time you doubt, don't ask, "Am I good enough?" Ask, "What have I overcome before?" That answer won't just comfort you, it'll remind you that you didn't give up. Second, you need to rethink mistakes. Most of us grow up fearing them because schools reward the right answer and punish the wrong one. But life doesn't work that way. Stoics taught that mistakes aren't failures, they're information. They show you what to rethink and where to adjust. If a fresh graduate fails at leading a team due to inexperience, it's not the end, it's valuable data. Or, if a young entrepreneur loses money on a startup but gains insight about people, the market, and themselves, that's solid ground for a smarter decision next time. Clear-thinking people aren't perfect. They're the ones who admit mistakes, reflect, and correct course. When you can do that, every setback becomes a checkpoint, not the end of the road, but a moment to recalibrate your compass. Clear thinking also can't thrive if you carry a limiting mindset. Picture two people both rejected in a final interview. One thinks, "Maybe I'm not good enough. Opportunities like that won't come again." The other thinks, "There's still something I need to improve. Next time I'll be ready." The second person doesn't just feel better, they're more likely to succeed next time. That's the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. Stoicism doesn't ask you to cling stubbornly to one goal. It teaches you to keep moving forward, one step, one lesson at a time. People with growth mindsets don't see failure as a loss. They see it as raw material for self-mastery. To stay clear-headed under pressure, you also need to balance reason with emotion. You won't always be calm, but you can always create space for clarity to return. Imagine you're arguing with someone close to you. Anger rises. The usual reaction is to yell or walk away. But what if, just for 30 seconds, you paused, took a deep breath and asked yourself, "What am I really feeling?" You might realize your anger isn't about them. It's about not feeling heard. Writing something like, "I feel disappointed because my voice doesn't feel valued," helps you step back from emotion and see it as a signal, not a command. This matters not just in conflict, but in quieter moments, like scrolling social media and seeing others flaunt success. A flicker of envy arises. If you don't notice it, it might drag you into proving yourself in ways that don't align with who you are. But if you pause and ask, Is what I'm doing true to my values? You interrupt the autopilot. That habit of pausing and listening rather than reacting strengthens awareness, one of the most vital tools for thinking clearly. In parallel, you need to build mental discipline, not through self-punishment, but through rituals that keep your mind clean, focused, and sharp. Wake up an hour earlier, not to hustle, but to avoid starting your day in chaos. Make space for deep work, no multitasking, no distractions. Turn off notifications. Do one thing at a time. Spend at least 10 minutes a day doing absolutely nothing, no phone, no talking, no action. Just sit and watch your thoughts. It's in these quiet moments that you begin to hear yourself and adjust your direction truly. Another essential part of the inner compass is a personal philosophy. It's your North Star, the baseline that guides your choices. It doesn't have to be a bold declaration. Sometimes it's just one sentence you return to when things get blurry. Like, I live to take action, not complain. Or, I choose integrity even when no one is watching. Whenever you make a decision, ask, does this align with my philosophy? If not, what's pulling me off track? If you want to forge an inner compass, start with this simple nightly ritual. Write down one action you're proud of, one moment you chose reason over emotion, and one thing you could do differently. Do it by hand, not on your phone. That small act, done consistently, will slowly reshape your relationship with yourself toward honesty, reflection, and realignment. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Find someone you trust, not to tell you what to do, but to reflect back who you are. Once a week, share a tough decision with them and ask for feedback. Not so you can follow their advice, but so you can better understand your own thinking. That's how you learn to see beyond your default perspective. Because if forging an inner compass is the first step to thinking clearly and choosing wisely, the next step is learning how to break out of your own limited view and see from all sides. That's when your thinking expands, and that's where the next lesson will take you. See every angle. A skill that not only sharpens your mind, but also makes it deeper, broader, and more humane. But before we go there, pause and ask yourself, is your inner compass ready? Imagine this. In an emergency meeting, surrounded by a room full of tense faces, one man sits quietly. He doesn't rush to speak, nor does he argue. Instead of jumping into the chaos, he observes, takes notes, and asks a few pointed questions. As the discussion circles back on itself and exhaustion begins to take over, he finally speaks, slowly, deliberately. Not to win the debate, but to point out what no one has mentioned in the past hour, a possibility overlooked, yet key to unlocking the entire problem. What sets him apart isn't superior intelligence. It's his ability to pause, step back, and consider all perspectives before acting. Stoicism teaches that clear thinking comes from a mind that knows how to detach, observe without clinging, and respond by choice, not by impulse. In Stoic philosophy, multidimensional thinking isn't a rhetorical trick. It's a foundation for wise living. When our mind is trapped in a single mode of thought, it's like standing in the fog. We see only a few steps ahead and mistake it for the full picture. Stoicism reminds us, not everything we think is true, and not everything we feel is real. To think clearly and make sound decisions, we must learn to step outside ourselves, to let go of our default viewpoints, and become quiet enough to see what's been hidden all along. Why does this matter? Because in most bad decisions, The problem isn't a lack of information, it's a flawed way of seeing. We don't look deeply enough, widely enough, or objectively enough. Cognitive biases, like only believing what confirms our opinions, trap us inside a mental box without us even knowing. Strong emotions like anger, anxiety, or urgency push us to act as if we're completely right, even when we've only seen a sliver of the whole picture. Stoicism teaches that wisdom isn't knowing everything, it's being willing to question yourself and stay open to the idea that you could be wrong. One of the most powerful ways to expand your perspective is to ask, is there another way to see this? It sounds simple, but when asked sincerely, this question can redirect the entire course of a decision. Imagine receiving a blunt message from a close friend and feeling hurt. Your first instinct might be to judge, they're being disrespectful. But if you pause and ask, is there another explanation? You might realize they're under work stress or going through something personal. That one moment of openness stops you from reacting emotionally and opens the door to empathy. Another technique is arguing against yourself. When you believe something with absolute certainty, try writing down all the reasons it could be wrong, not to shake your confidence, but to test its strength. Clear thinkers don't protect their ideas by attacking others. They test their ideas by challenging themselves. The more you explore the counter-arguments, the more you sharpen your view or uncover blind spots you hadn't seen. Flexible thinking also means switching between different mental modes, from analytical logic to imaginative creativity to strategic big-picture thinking. Take investing, for example. It's not just about crunching numbers. You also have to imagine future scenarios and weigh how each choice aligns with your long-term goals. Clear thinking doesn't come from one lens. It's the result of weaving together many lenses into a fuller view. But none of this is possible without inner stillness. Under pressure, when emotions run high, multidimensional thinking collapses. You start choosing the fastest solution, not the wisest. Stoicism teaches that calm doesn't mean feeling nothing, it means not being swept away. It's a discipline, like a warrior training with a sword. Not to show off skill, but to survive the hardest battle of all, the battle within. You can train this skill daily with a simple practice. Before making a decision, write down 3 completely opposing perspectives to your initial instinct. Don't just think them, write them. This forces you to slow down and make your thinking concrete. Or find a close friend and intentionally debate from opposite sides, not to argue, but to learn how they see the world. Another habit, pause before judging. When you hear a disagreeing opinion, don't react. Tell yourself, I don't have to agree, but I will listen fully. That pause creates a gap, and in that gap, clear thinking can take root. True multidimensional thinking also requires focused discipline. In today's distracted world, we often jump between perspectives without going deep. The result is shallow understanding, knowing a little about everything but truly understanding nothing. To really see from different angles, you need to stay with each one long enough to grasp its depth, then synthesize. That's why Stoics advocated daily solitude, to write, to reflect, to listen to yourself. Not to isolate, but to separate truth from illusion. Finally, clear thinking isn't just a mental exercise, it's the harmony of logic, intuition, and action. When you've looked deeply, broadly, and still see a path worth taking, take it. Don't get stuck in endless analysis. The Stoic isn't a passive thinker but a deliberate actor, even in the harshest conditions. Remember, clarity isn't a state, it's a repeated choice. Every time you pause to consider another angle, admit you might be wrong, or act from values instead of emotion, you're building a sharper, stronger, more resilient mind. And when you make that a habit, seeing all sides as a survival instinct, you're ready for the next lesson. Because one moment of clarity is never enough. The real challenge is this: can you commit to clear thinking every single day? We'll continue with that core idea, making clarity not just a method, but a way of life. There's a paradox that holds true for most of us. The more we grow up and gain experience, the more likely we are to stop thinking deeply. We start relying on our intuition, trusting what we already know, and assuming we've figured out how the world works. But the Stoics didn't see it that way. To them, clear thinking was a form of virtue, a way of living deliberately, with discipline and constant self-refinement. They understood that clarity of thought isn't a destination we reach and forget about. It's a daily commitment. A lifelong commitment to clear thinking, in the Stoic spirit, isn't about being cold or rigid. It's about staying alert, able to recognize what's real, what's an illusion, and when it's time to stop, reassess, and realign. Like a gardener who must remove weeds every day to keep the garden from turning wild, someone who values clear thinking must regularly clear their mind of anxiety, bias, and noise. The Stoics taught that to live well, we must learn to think well. And to think well, we must keep our minds alive by constantly learning. Not learning to be better than others, but to see deeper into ourselves and the world. Continuous learning keeps our thinking from becoming rigid. It doesn't have to mean reading heavy books or chasing new degrees. Sometimes it's as simple as asking a colleague, "Why did you choose that approach?" Or spending 10 minutes a day listening to a good podcast while washing the dishes. Every time we choose quality input, we nourish and refresh our minds. Learning must go hand in hand with reflection. That may sound abstract, but it's actually simple. The Stoics suggested writing down what happened during your day, not to complain, but to understand yourself better. A young father once told me he started journaling after playing with his child each evening. He'd note when he lost his patience and when he felt genuine joy. After a few weeks, patterns emerged, moments he tended to snap, moments he was fully present. Reflection didn't make him rigid, it made him more aware. Of course, we're not always in the headspace for clear thinking. On overloaded workdays, after tense arguments with loved ones, or when life just comes at us too fast, our minds fog over, like a windshield in the rain. Stoicism doesn't demand constant clarity. It teaches us how to return to clarity when we've lost it. That return is mental endurance. And to build it, we must practice what you could call intentional pausing. Instead of firing off a reply to an irritating email, step away. Walk for 5 minutes. Drink a glass of water. Then respond. That pause doesn't make you weak. It puts you back in control. Another key to thinking clearly is learning to filter information. In this age of overflow, the goal isn't to know everything, but to know what matters. You can start with one small rule. Don't check your phone first thing in the morning. Instead, read something, one page of a book, a thoughtful newsletter, or even just a note you wrote yesterday. When you choose what enters your mind, you also choose what shapes your thinking. Stoics believed in the power of the present. When our minds are pulled into the past or projected into the future, we're more likely to make decisions rooted in fear than truth. One way to stay clear is to stay present, focused on the task at hand, even the smallest one. A single mother once told me, "I've decided to do just one thing at a time. When I'm cooking, I only cook. I don't think about money, my boss, or my daughter's future. I just cook." That kind of presence is wisdom in action. The real enemy of clarity isn't a lack of knowledge, it's the inability to face our mistakes. Stoics didn't see being wrong as failure. They saw it as data, raw material for growth. Imagine you get into an argument with a friend. If all you see is how you're right and they're wrong, you walk away with nothing but bitterness. But if you pause and ask yourself, am I reacting or reflecting? That's the moment clear thinking begins. Self-awareness is essential. Not everyone needs a therapist to explore their inner world, but everyone needs moments of honest self-checking. Set a 5-minute reminder each night and ask, did I live according to my values today? Or am I chasing comfort instead of what's right? These small questions pull you back to your center. And from that center, something becomes clear. Thinking clearly isn't just for your own sake. The clearer your mind, the more you can help others. A decisive call from you can untangle a whole team's confusion. A sincere piece of feedback can redirect someone's path. A high school teacher once told me he tries never to answer a student's question too quickly. He always takes a few seconds to pause, then respond. To him, clarity is how he shows respect. The Bible says, test everything. Hold fast what is good. This isn't just spiritual advice, it's a way to live. Keep testing, keep checking, keep holding on to what makes you better. That's where clarity lives, in the constant tuning and retuning of your thoughts. You can start this journey today. Pick a small habit. Every evening, write down one question. When today did I think most clearly? And one decision. How will I think more clearly tomorrow? Do this for 30 days, and you might be amazed at how sharp your mind becomes. Clear thinking doesn't come from how smart you are. It comes from your willingness to be honest with yourself, to face the unknown, to correct yourself, to choose again, to slow down so you can think straight. And most of all, to commit, not once, but for life, to a way of thinking that is honest, grounded, and intentional. The clarity you build today won't just help you live right. It will become a light for those around you, your family, your colleagues, and the generation after you. Because, in the end, you're not just living for yourself. You're creating something that can continue. A way of thinking, a way of being, and a belief that wisdom can be practiced, preserved, and passed on. And that's where this path is taking you, not just to think clearly for yourself, but to leave behind a legacy of clear thinking, one that can keep living in others, long after you're gone. We'll move forward from here in the next lesson. But for now, sit with this question. Are you living with the clarity you hope your children, your friends, and future generations will one day have? There's a quiet but persistent question that sooner or later each of us must face. After everything, what remains of the way we lived? It's not the job titles, not the bank account, not the framed certificates on the wall. What truly remains, what shapes how we are remembered, is how we thought, how we responded, how we made choices in the chaos of everyday contradictions. In the language of Stoic philosophy, This is called a legacy of clear thinking. Stoicism teaches that a life worth living doesn't come from controlling the outside world, but from mastering the world within, how we think, how we perceive events, and how we choose during emotional storms. Clear thinking isn't just a tool for being more effective. It's a signature, a quiet yet powerful mirror we leave behind, even when we say nothing. Have you noticed? The people who make us feel safe aren't always the most talented. They're the clearest. They don't speak much, but when they do, every word is grounded. They're not always right, but they're consistently composed. Being around them, you feel you can rely on them, not because they're powerful, but because they're centered. They make decisions based on values, not fleeting emotions. They communicate directly, not vaguely. And that's why people trust them, listen to them, and learn from them. Clear thinking, when practiced with consistency, becomes a quiet force. It lets you lead not by raising your voice, but through calm strength. It helps others handle conflict, difficulty, and uncertainty more rationally, simply because they saw you do it. For example, in a tense meeting where everyone's arguing, you choose to stay silent for a few minutes, then gently ask, "What's our ultimate goal here?" It's not a groundbreaking question, but because you asked it from a place of clarity, the room quiets down. In that moment, you've shifted the tone, not through authority, but through insight. Clear thinking is built from hundreds of small moments of self-awareness. It's not about being lofty. It's in the everyday, like when you almost yell at your child for spilling water, but pause and say instead, "It's okay, let's clean this up and talk after." Or when you're tempted to fire off an irritated email to your boss, but you write it, wait 10 minutes, then revise it with a calmer tone. These quiet moments, repeated over time, are how your legacy is formed, not flashy, but deeply real. Stoicism teaches that we're not defined by the results of our actions, but by whether those actions reflect our inner dignity. So if you want to live a life of depth, don't ask, "What will I get?" Ask instead, "Who am I becoming?" You can begin cultivating a legacy of clear thinking in 3 simple steps. Step 1. Daily reflection. Nothing elaborate. Just each night ask yourself, was there a moment today when I acted without clarity? Why? What could I have done differently? Write it in your phone, a notebook, or just hold it in your mind. What matters is honesty. Example: you agreed to take on extra work you didn't want because you were afraid of seeming lazy. That night, you write, "I said yes because I feared judgment, but I'm overwhelmed. Next time I'll say, I'd love to help, but I can't commit to doing it well right now." Through this, you don't just know yourself better, you're laying the groundwork for lasting clarity. Step 2. Speak honestly. Clear thinking doesn't live only in your head. It must show up in your words. When you don't understand, ask. When you disagree, speak up without attacking. When you're wrong, admit it. This kind of transparency, though it might seem vulnerable, is the highest form of inner strength. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect you. Example: a coworker sends you a subpar design. Instead of saying something vague like, "It's fine," but you say, "This part doesn't match our team's criteria. Here's a suggestion." Clear, direct, and non-judgmental. It makes your feedback easier to hear. Over time, people come to trust you because you're easy to understand. Step 3. Choose based on values. This is the hardest part because it requires you to know what truly matters to you. When faced with profit or integrity, what do you choose? Pleasing others or staying true to your principles? Every choice becomes a building block in the legacy you leave. No decision is too small. Think back to a time you turned down money because it came from something unethical. You didn't tell anyone, but you felt at peace. Months later, someone in your circle says they heard about what you did and that it taught them something about integrity. You weren't trying to set an example, but you became one. That's the ripple effect Stoicism points to. Quiet, but enduring. As you keep practicing clear thinking, you'll notice something shift. You listen more deeply, react more slowly, and ask more questions. You judge less. You don't rush to prove anything. You want to understand. That's the sign of someone who's stepping into self-mastery. A journey with no final destination, but every step makes you a deeper version of yourself. When you live this way, not perfectly, but with purpose, you naturally inspire others. You don't have to teach anyone anything, but people will want to think more clearly, slow down, and choose for the right reasons, just by watching you. That's no longer self-development, that's community building, starting with you. So pause for a moment and ask, if someone were watching how you live, how you speak, how you choose, how you handle difficulty, what would they learn from you? Is there something in your thinking today you'd want your child, your co-worker, or your closest friend to follow? If the answer is yes, you're already building a legacy. And if not yet, this is your chance to start. And if you now understand that clear thinking isn't something to keep locked in your mind, but something to practice in the real world, then you're ready for the final leg of this journey. The part where every ideal meets the test of reality, where you learn to live with clarity, even in chaos. And that is when Stoicism truly comes alive. Before we dive into real life, where clear thinking must prove its value in everyday actions, let's pause for a moment to look back at the journey we've taken. Together, we've climbed 13 steps, each one a crucial piece in shaping clarity, not just as a skill, but as a way of life. We started by clearing the mind, because just like a dusty mirror can't reflect the truth, a mind clouded by worry, bias, and noise can't see clearly. Only when the mirror is clean do we start to see the world and ourselves as they really are. Next, we learn to find space for stillness, just like the ancient Stoics who carved out time for inner silence. If the mind is always reacting to the news, to others' emotions, to the rush of life, there's no room left for conscious choice. We embraced uncertainty instead of resisting it, because life isn't about controlling everything, but about understanding its ever-changing nature and learning to respond, not just react. We rewired our thinking, replacing outdated mental models with more grounded, realistic ones. We built personal decision systems, not guided by whims, but by principles and standards. Most importantly, we learned to decide based on core values, not fleeting emotions or the expectations of others. We trained ourselves to think in feedback loops, observe, learn, and adjust, instead of repeating the same mistakes. We learned to decide quickly when needed, without letting hesitation freeze our momentum. We practiced turning clear thinking into clear action. We built an inner compass to keep our direction, even in chaos. We learned to see from multiple perspectives, with less judgment and more understanding. We committed to staying clear for the long haul, because clarity isn't a moment, it's a mindset. And finally, we realized that this kind of clarity, when truly lived, can become a legacy for those we love and those who come after us. But all of this, every tool, principle, insight, and behavior, has only laid the foundation. And foundations, while essential, don't make a home. A real life must be built, one brick, one breath at a time. That's where the final lesson comes in, clarity in real life. This is where theory gets tested, in high-stakes meetings, in tough conversations with a partner, in pivotal career decisions. This is where wisdom stops being something you know and becomes something you live, direct, ground, and deliberate. This is where you begin living as a person of clarity, not perfect, but honest, not rushed, but steady, never lost, because you know your why and your way. The Stoics taught that wisdom isn't something to admire, it's something to live. Every day, every moment, every choice. Clarity isn't about how much you know, it's about being awake enough to see what matters right now. It's not lofty, it's as simple as pausing before reacting, choosing one thing instead of three, speaking your truth instead of pleasing others. That's what clarity looks like, tested in daily life. Picture this. You're in a Zoom meeting. Your manager drops a new directive, vague, poorly timed, and clashing with your current project. Instantly, your brain flashes three options: push back, stay silent, or DM a teammate to complain. But if you're living with clarity, you pause, you take a breath and ask, what matters most here? Results, relationships, or ego? Then you speak with intention. I see where you're going with this, and there's one point I think we need to clarify so it doesn't derail our timeline. In that moment, you don't just keep your cool, you help the whole team stay aligned. Clarity doesn't come from learning more. It comes from asking better questions. One of the best: why am I doing this? Simple, but rare. Without it, you'll start your day by opening 5 apps, replying to 7 messages while half writing an email, and end the day feeling like you did a lot, but got nowhere. A freelance friend once told me that writing down just one sentence each morning, "If I only do one thing today, what should it be?" cut her busy work by 40% and doubled her output. You don't need fancy tools to work with clarity. Just clean your workspace before you begin. Silence your phone. Block your time into 60-minute chunks and commit to one task at a time. If a random thought intrudes, write it down, move on. You don't need to work faster, you need to work with intention. That's clarity in action. And in communication, a coworker sends a snarky email. In the past, you'd snap back, vent to someone, or start a quiet conflict. But now with clarity, you pause and ask, is this hurting me or triggering an old insecurity? Then you reply with focus, no drama, no digs, because clarity doesn't demand that you win. It only asks that you don't let emotional noise control your keyboard. Clarity shows up in your personal life too. Say your partner comes home late without telling you. Instead of snapping, "Do you even care how worried I was?" you say, "I felt left out," not knowing what was happening. That's not a therapy script. That's clarity, separating emotion from judgment, speaking truth without blame, staying connected without losing yourself. In your emotional life, clarity is recognizing what you're feeling instead of being swept away by it. One employee shared how every time his boss criticized him, he felt worthless. But through self-reflection, he saw that this wound didn't come from work. It came from childhood, always being compared to siblings. With that realization, feedback stopped feeling like an attack. No longer, I'm offended. Instead, this is a reminder, and I can choose how to respond. And habits? Clarity shows up in how you start and end your day. You don't need a 5:30 a.m. wake-up or a 10K run. Just start with something intentional. Make coffee without grabbing your phone. Make your bed without rushing. Write one guiding thought for the day. And end with 3 questions. When did I live clearly today? What clouded my mind? What do I want to change tomorrow? Do this for a week, a month, and you'll stop living on autopilot. Clarity in real life is about choosing. Choosing to pause before reacting. Choosing to do less, but do it well. Choosing not to let busyness blur what matters. Choosing to see things as they are, no drama, no denial. Choosing to do what's right, even when it's hard. Tomorrow, you don't need to change the world. You just need to stay awake for 3 small moments. One decision you make, one reaction you manage, one action you give your full presence to. If you do that, congrats. You're living like a Stoic. No need to shout, no need to prove, just be clear. And deep down you'll know, clarity is the beginning of everything worth living for. We've just explored 14 principles for thinking clearly and making better decisions, not through lofty words, but through the clarity, discipline, and depth of Stoic philosophy. Each principle is a piece of the puzzle, from clearing mental clutter and focusing on one task at a time, to living by your core values and staying grounded in reason amid emotional chaos. Put them all together, and you don't just make better decisions, you start living a life that's focused, grounded, and not easily swayed by passing distractions. Clarity isn't a destination, it's a daily choice. And by simply choosing wisely in this very moment, you've already begun the journey. It starts with the smallest things: how you reply to a message, how you walk into a meeting, how you listen to your own emotions. With time, clear thinking becomes part of who you are. If any of this resonates with what you're seeking, leave a comment, share the lesson that struck you most, or a situation you're currently facing. I read everyone. And if you're ready to keep strengthening a clear mind, a steady heart, and a deliberate way of living, make sure to subscribe. The journey to clarity isn't a solo one, we're in it together.